discover the incredible moment she unknowingly vent her heart to her secret millionaire boss. Sarah adjusted the apron around her waist, its fabric frayed but familiar, like an old friend. The downtown restaurant buzzed with life, laughter mixing with the clinking of glasses and the rhythmic thump of dance music. But beneath the surface of this polished cocoon, Sarah carried an invisible weight, one that danced around her like a dark shadow. As she poured coffee, she felt a flicker of her dreams stirring, sweet vanilla frosting and the warmth of a cozy bakery flashing through her mind. But reality snapped her back faster than she could imagine. Rent was due, and her 10-year-old daughter, Lily, was counting on her between servings. She caught glimpses of her boss, Jonathan, an unassuming man who wore his responsibility as effortlessly as his well-tailored suits. He always greeted her with an encouraging smile, but tonight, Sarah felt the ache of desperation pulling at her chest. She sought refuge in his company amidst the chaos, sharing snippets of her life during the rare moments they stood side by side. "I just want to make Lily's life better," she confessed one evening, her voice a whisper against the restaurant's bustling noise. "And every step feels like it's uphill, especially with my ex always looming around." Jonathan's brow furrowed, and for a second, the carefree air of the restaurant slipped away like a tide retreating from the shore. "You have no idea how much you inspire me," he replied softly. His words burrowed deep, bringing a warmth to her heart, a warmth that temporarily softened her worries until the sound of the door swinging open shattered the moment. Her ex-husband, David, stormed in, his presence enough to cast an unsettling silence over the room. "Where's my money, Sarah?" he barked, cutting through the air like a jagged knife. "I need a share, or I'll take Lily from you." Tears pricked Sarah's eyes, but she held her head high. "You won't take her from me," she fired back, her voice steady but trembling inside. That night, after the restaurant closed, she found solace in talking to Jonathan. They stood amidst the scattered chairs and dimmed lights, the aroma of fried food still lingering. "I'm terrified, Jonathan," she admitted, her voice shaking. "I've poured everything into trying to be a good mother. What if I fail?" He looked at her, something deeper in his gaze. There was a hesitation, a flicker of something he was holding back. "Sarah, I need to tell you something." The air thickened with tension, anticipation hanging in the space between them. Before he could continue, panic coursed through her. What if he shared something that changed everything? "Please, I don't know if I can take more uncertainty," she breathed, her chest tightening. Suddenly, the door swung open again, a burst of cool air colliding with the lingering warmth of their conversation. Jonathan stepped closer, and an electric current tingled between them. She could almost taste the promise of relief on the edge of his lips, a connection forged in struggle. "Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue." Jonathan took a deep breath, steadying himself. "I've been where you are, Sarah. I know how hard you fight, but I think you'll be surprised at what can change when you least expect it." Just then, everything spun in her mind: visions of her bakery, the laughter of Lily, security in a home of their own. But would it truly be attainable? Could she have the audacity to reach for it? Jonathan's eyes searched hers, and as she gazed back, a flicker of strength ignited within her. What truth lay behind his words that made her heart race? Could Sarah finally find the courage to reclaim her dreams, or would the chaos of her life drown out the hope she so desperately clung to? As uncertainty loomed, an answer felt tantalizingly close, and the clock ticked on, leaving her breathless with anticipation. The tension hung thick in the air as Sarah and Jonathan stood just inches apart, their breath mingling in the dim light. For a moment, it felt like the world around them faded to silence. Jonathan's eyes held an intensity that both thrilled and terrified her. She dared not blink, as if doing so would shatter the fragile moment they had come to share. "Sarah," he began, his voice lower now, steady, "I've watched you pour your heart into everything you do. I admire that, but I've also seen the weight you carry. You shouldn't have to do this alone." His words washed over her, igniting a swirl of emotions. A part of her yearned to lean into him, to believe that maybe, just maybe, someone could stand by her side. But doubt crept in, whispering ugly reminders of her reality. "I can't impose on you," she whispered back, overwhelmed. "You have your own life, your own things to deal with. I don't want to be a burden." Jonathan took a small step forward, closing the distance. "You're not a burden, Sarah. You're strong. But we all need help sometimes." His warmth was a balm, yet her fear clawed at her insides. She felt a tear escape, trailing down her cheek. What if I can't make it? What if I can't protect Lily? Moving instinctively, Jonathan reached out and brushed the tear away with his thumb. "You're already protecting her by working so hard. But you need to acknowledge your dreams, too. You deserve to be happy." She met his gaze, and in that instant time stood still. She let out a shaky breath, feeling a flicker of hope ignite. But the relief was short-lived as the door swung open once more, bringing a gust of air filled with laughter and celebration. A group of young customers filed in, the chatter lively and carefree, oblivious to the tension left hanging behind them. Jonathan stepped back, and a chill coursed through Sarah. The connection felt fragile now, as if it were glass, easily shattered by the re-entry of reality. She averted her eyes, needing a moment to gather herself as the strain faded into the restaurant's vibrant atmosphere. Jonathan turned, putting on a professional smile. "Let us get back to work," he said, his voice suddenly crisp. But Sarah could see the flicker of concern behind his eyes. She nodded, despite the ache in her heart. They were back to the dance of servers and customers, laughter and clanking dishes a far cry from the raw moment they had shared. Sarah poured coffee, her hands shaking slightly. The day had darkened into night, but her heart still thudded wildly. What had just happened? She felt emboldened yet terrified at the thought of those few moments. "Sarah," Jonathan called, snapping her from her thoughts. She turned, and he flashed a quick smile before returning to his work. She wanted to say something, to reach out and break the barrier he'd put back up, but the words strangled themselves in her throat as the night wore on. Waves of anxiety mixed with hope surged within her. Could she let herself dream again? Could she push through the fear and uncertainty that shadowed her every move? The restaurant emptied, and finally, silence settled over the din. The cleanup was almost a final ritual, the light of the moon creeping through the windows. She and Jonathan worked side by side again, and the air felt different. More intimate, more charged. "Sarah," he began cautiously, but just then, the door opened with a sudden crash. David stepped inside, his expression dark and dangerous. "Looks like he asked back for more," Jonathan muttered, his tone shifting to a protective stance. Fear gripped Sarah's heart like a vice. She wanted to run, to shield Lily from this. But could she trust Jonathan enough to stand by her side, just as he said? As David's gaze fell upon her, she could feel her resolve weakening. Would she fight for her daughter, for her dreams, or let this moment diminish? In that split second, she realized something profound. Perhaps this was the moment to define her strength. But as uncertainty lingered, she couldn't shake the feeling that everything she'd been fighting for was about to be put to the ultimate test. What would she choose? As the door slammed shut, Sarah's heart raced, ready for what was to come. Would she finally take a stand? Or would she retreat into the shadows of her past? The air grew colder as David stepped into the restaurant, his heavy footsteps echoing ominously. Sarah's stomach twisted into knots. She should have felt comforted by Jonathan's presence, but instead, an electric charge infused the air, amplifying her anxiety. She glanced at Jonathan, whose gaze hardened as he stepped in front of her, like a shield ready to protect. "David," he said, his voice steady but low. "What do you want?" David's eyes were dark, scanning the room before landing on Sarah. His lips curled into a smirk that sent a chill down her spine. "Just came to see how my little family is doing," he said, sarcasm dripping from his voice. I guess some things never change. Stay away from her, Jonathan replied, his voice firm. It was the first time Sarah had heard such confidence in him. He wasn't just the easygoing friend. He was a warrior, ready to defend her. Or what? David taunted, taking a step closer. With every inch he gained, every breath he took, Sarah felt her heart race faster. You think you can fight me? You think she'll choose you? Don't talk to her like that, Jonathan shot back, straightening up, holding his ground. The tension was palpable. It was a standoff, and Sarah felt all her fears bubbling to the surface. Choose? She interjected, her voice shaking. She stepped forward, creating a gap between herself and Jonathan. I'm not choosing anyone. I'm just trying to keep my daughter safe. David chuckled, mocking her. You think you can do that? You can't even protect yourself, Sarah. You think this guy will actually be there for you? His kindness won't change who you are. Don't listen to him, Jonathan urged, stepping to her side. You're stronger than this. With her heart pounding, Sarah felt the weight of the moment pressing down on her like a heavy blanket. Would cultivating a spark of hope mean launching herself into a fight for both her and Lily's life? She took a deep breath, searching for the courage that had been buried beneath layers of self-doubt. Maybe I can't protect myself from the past, but I can fight for my future for Lily. The moment hung thick with unspoken resolve. Jonathan's eyes met hers with a warmth of understanding, but they also flickered with concern. Isn't that right, David? She pressed, trying to rally her strength. You've won enough battles against me, but this time I won't go down without a fight. Let us see if you can back that up, David sneered. He took a step closer, looming over her like a storm cloud, ready to unleash chaos. Her heart raced, but a small voice inside reminded her that she had allies, and Jonathan was not just an acquaintance anymore. He was becoming something more. Step away from her, Jonathan warned, his voice low and steady, eyes locked on David. In that charged air, she felt a sense of empowerment she hadn't realized she could muster. For the first time, she stood back to back with Jonathan, ready to confront the darkness that had overshadowed her for too long. We're done with your games, Sarah said, her voice steady despite the turmoil inside. You will not scare me anymore. A moment passed, pregnant with energy, and both Jonathan and David seemed to sense its weight. David's expression flickered, uncertainty creeping in as he weighed his next move. Then, in a flash, the moment exploded. You think you can take her from me? David yelled, his anger spilling over. Just as tension reached its peak, the door swung open again, and a figure stepped into the restaurant, a face that could either save them or plunge them deeper into chaos. Could it be a friend? Or was it someone from Sarah's past who could unravel everything she had just begun to build? With a pounding heart, she braced for whatever came next, knowing this was just the beginning of a battle much larger than herself. In the charged atmosphere of the restaurant, the door swung wide, revealing a tall figure with an imposing presence. The newcomer brushed their coat aside and looked around, their eyes locking onto Sarah with unexpected familiarity. For a moment, time seemed to freeze. Sarah held her breath, recognizing the woman instantly. Cynthia, she whispered, disbelief mixing with anxiety as memories flooded back. Cynthia had been a beacon of support during some of Sarah's darkest days, a friendly face in a swirling sea of chaos. But there was something unsettling about her calm demeanor amidst the rising tension. Is everything all right? Cynthia asked, her voice steady as she surveyed the scene, her gaze darting between David and Jonathan, finally settling on Sarah with a mixture of concern and concern. It's complicated, Sarah replied, her throat dry. She instinctively took a step towards Jonathan, but the urge to connect with Cynthia tugged at her heart. David's expression darkened as he took in Cynthia's presence. And who are you? Just another one of Sarah's little friends? He scoffed, eyes narrowing dangerously. Someone who cares about her, Cynthia replied sharply, stepping closer to Sarah as if to create a barrier. The friction in the room intensified, thick as molasses. Jonathan placed a protective hand at Sarah's back, ready for anything. It wasn't just about confrontation. This was a test of trust and fortitude. "Leave them alone, David," Cynthia said, unyielding. "You can't keep terrorizing Sarah and expect her to let you walk all over her. She deserves better." The intensity in Jonathan's gaze shifted at Cynthia's words. Sarah felt it too, a sense of unity arising from her past connections and the present courage of those who cared for her. "Better?" David laughed, the sound rasping in the confined space. "You think she can be better? Look at her. This is the reality of her life," he sneered, motioning dismissively towards Sarah. "Always chasing shadows, trying to escape. She can never be something she is not." But instead of withering under David's harsh words, Sarah felt something inside her shift. "No more running, David," she declared firmly. "You do not get to dictate my life anymore." Cynthia's eyes sparkled with pride, the kind that ignites when you glimpse the strength in someone you care for. "Sarah," she said, tone gentle yet encouraging, "when I first met you, I saw your potential. You just have to believe in it." In that instant, Sarah glimpsed a glimmer of her own worth, a flicker of the woman she wanted to be, a mother who would do anything for her child. "Enough of this," David growled, taking a threatening step forward, but Jonathan's stance solidified beside Sarah. The previous fear in his gaze shifted to defiance, fueling the passion of a protector. "I won't let you hurt Sarah or Lily," he said calmly, but with strength radiating from his voice as the two men squared off. Sarah felt a stirring within, the growing fire of determination fanned by the presence of both Jonathan and Cynthia. She could feel that this was the moment for change, a chance to reclaim her narrative. The game was no longer about playing defense. But just when it seemed everything was about to shift in their favor, David's smirk returned, sinister and calculating. "You think this is just about you? You don't know the lengths I will go to get what I want." His words hung ominously in the air, and Sarah knew the showdown was far from over. The doorbell chimed again as another figure entered, drawing their attention away from the impending confrontation. Thumping heartbeats quickened as anxiety flared anew. What would this newcomer bring to their already volatile situation? A moment of hope or deeper betrayal? The door swung open again with a soft chime, sending a rush of anticipation through the crowded room. All eyes turned, including Sarah's, and her stomach twisted in uncertainty. She knew whatever or whoever entered now could alter the precarious balance like a tossed stone in a still pond. A man stepped inside, and the moment he made eye contact with Sarah, an intense current seemed to pulse in the crowded air. His sharp features were highlighted by the soft glow of the overhead lights, accentuating the strength in his jawline and the warmth in his hazel eyes. "James?" Sarah breathed, barely above a whisper. Memories rushed back, quick glances exchanged during meetings, casual laughter over coffee breaks, the understanding that had formed between them without either saying a word. "Sarah?" he said, voice a blend of concern and surprise as he scanned the tense scene. But the moment his eyes met David's, the tension thickened, and Sarah felt the air shift. "What are you doing here?" David stepped forward, his contempt clear in his stance. "Back off," Jonathan interjected, stepping protectively in front of Sarah. Sarah's heart raced. She had no idea if James was merely a friendly face or a force that would provoke more chaos. "This isn't your problem." James's gaze darted between the two men before returning to Sarah. "I heard you might need help. I didn't know it would be like this." "Help? You think she needs help from you?" David scoffed. "You're just a bystander in her messy life, aren't you?" Sarah's heart sank momentarily at David's words. Would James really see her that way? No. James stepped forward with purpose, eyes ablaze with a fierce protectiveness. "She is not a mess. She is fighting for her life, and everyone in this room should be backing her up." Cynthia nodded in agreement, her expression morphing from surprise to fierce pride. "You got it, James. It's about time we all stand together." With a noticeable shift, Sarah felt the support surrounding her intensify. Jonathan's presence, combined with Cynthia's fierce loyalty, and now James' unexpected arrival, drew out a strength within her she didn't know she had. "We're done hiding, David," Sarah said, her voice steadying with each word. "I'm not going to let your threats control me anymore." David's smirk faltered, his nostrils flaring in irritation. You'll regret this, you know. It's not just about you. You think this is the end? I don't care what you think. She snapped back, the fire in her voice surprising her. Everything you've built on fear is crumbling right in front of you. The restaurant buzzed with hushed whispers around them, patrons leaning in, intrigued, glancing nervously at the brewing storm. For a moment, silence reigned in the bustling restaurant. Sarah could feel the weight of the room's gaze, the tension crackling like electricity, awaiting the next move. Then, in one swift motion, David pulled out his phone, his face painted in a smirk meant to intimidate. You'll regret this decision. Trust me. Panic surged through Sarah, but James stepped in closer, asserting his presence beside her in a silent vow of support. Whatever you have up your sleeve, it won't work, David. Then, just as swiftly as he had turned the tides, David walked backward, exiting through the same door without a backward glance. All the air seemed to rush back into the space. Are you all right? James asked, concern evident in his voice as he turned back to Sarah. Her heart softened, racing not with fear but with something resembling hope. I am for the first time in a long time. But just as relief washed over her, a thought crept in. Would David truly let this go? The door swung back open again. Who or what was coming next to test her resolve? The door creaked and the gentle chime rang out once more, signaling the arrival of yet another figure into the whirlwind that had just calmed. Sarah's heart stopped, and she felt a flicker of anxiety spark within her. As the figure stepped into the light, she was met with a familiar face. Clara, her old co-worker from the firm. Clara's eyes widened as she surveyed the charged atmosphere, clearly uncertain about what was unfolding. What's going on? She asked, her tone wavering between curiosity and concern. Clara, Sarah exclaimed, a sense of relief washing over her. While she hadn't expected to see her here, Clara had always been a steady presence, and she knew Sarah's struggles. But David's exit had not solved everything. The air still crackled. Whispers grew louder as other diners resumed their conversations, exchanging glances wondering if they had stumbled onto a reality show. Just a little drama. Nothing we can't handle, James replied, his voice steady as he maintained his watchful gaze on the door. Sarah noticed how he remained near her, like a lighthouse in a brewing storm. Clara rounded on Sarah. You're okay, right? I heard some things from the office, but I never imagined, she said, her voice laced with concern. I am. Thanks to James and everyone else here, Sarah said, taking a breath. I'm done letting David control my life. Clara glanced at James and Jonathan, noticing the protective circle formed around Sarah. That's the spirit. Nobody should be able to dictate your happiness. Sarah's heart swelled at Clara's words. Felt good to reclaim her courage. Yet, a knot tightened in her stomach as she thought of David, lurking out there, with whatever threat he might conjure next. Do you think he's really going to let it go? She asked, her voice tinged with apprehension. People like him rarely back down, Jonathan replied gruffly, jaw set with determination. But you've got us now. Their strong support lifted her spirits, and she nodded, allowing herself to feel a glimpse of hope. But that hope was quickly dimmed as she recalled the tension of the conversation. She turned to James, wanting to reach for the comfort in his presence. Thank you for showing up today, James. I didn't know I needed it until now. Of course, he replied, his hazel eyes filled with warmth. You're not alone in this, Sarah. Just then, the door swung open again. A hush fell once more, and all eyes shifted. Sarah felt her pulse race. In walked a tall, striking woman, who was instantly magnetic, someone else entirely, commissioning attention without even trying. Dark hair cascading over her shoulders. She was dressed sharply, yet stylishly. But it was her expression that jolted Sarah, an air of intensity, almost predatory. David followed behind her, looking smug as ever, a satisfied grin on his face that sent shivers down Sarah's spine. Ladies and gentlemen, he called out, his voice oozing with deceit. I'd like you to meet my lawyer, Ava. She comes highly recommended. Ava rolled her eyes momentarily at David, then turned her attention to the gathered group. I hear there's been a little misunderstanding involving my client. Unease washed over Sarah. She exchanged uneasy glances with Jonathan and Clara, who both seemed ready to act. What do you want, David? Sarah demanded, voice steady despite the rising dread. Oh, nothing much, he replied casually, the smugness not leaving his face. Just a little chat about what happens next. Sarah's heart raced, uncertainty clawing at her mind. Whatever happened next felt heavy with consequence, more than any of them anticipated. Would she once again be pulled into David's web of manipulation? As Ava advanced with an authoritative stride, the room's atmosphere shifted, fraught with anticipation. She tilted her head, cool confidence radiating from her as she focused on Sarah. Let us discuss the options on the table, shall we? Ava said, a hint of a challenge in her tone. Sarah could feel the swirling dread within her, her future hanging in the balance. But what was Ava really planning to do? Let us discuss the options on the table, shall we? Ava said, her voice smooth but laced with an edge, like a blade hidden beneath silk. The weight of her scrutiny pressed down on Sarah. She felt exposed, standing there with her friends. The murmurs of the diner faded into a distant hum, and time seemed to slow as Ava's eyes narrowed slightly. What options? Sarah managed, her throat dry. She could feel Jonathan tense beside her, ready to intervene. Clara's hand brushed against Sarah's arm, a silent vote of confidence that she desperately needed. Well, Ava began, stepping closer, her posture regal. My client believes a friendly resolution is possible. But it requires open communication. SNT that right, David? David smirked, leaning casually against the door frame. He was clearly enjoying the show. Exactly. I think all of us should have the chance to lay things out in the open. Get everything sorted. Don't you agree? Sarah? Sorted? She could hardly choke out the word. You think we're just going to sit down and chat like old friends after you've turned my life upside down? Ava's face showed no signs of sympathy. It would be more productive than spiraling into conflict, wouldn't it? How do you plan to move forward if you don't confront the issues? Sarah felt the breath catch in her chest. Memories flooded back, days spent tiptoeing around David's chaos, always living in fear of his next move. You're using the terms of reconciliation to manipulate me. Jonathan stepped forward, voice low and firm. You don't get to decide what's productive here, Ava. She's not alone in this. Of course not, Ava replied, her gaze unabashedly scanning the small group. But let us not kid ourselves. The stakes are high. The sooner we address them, the better it will be for everyone involved. Sarah nearly laughed at the absurdity. You think I'm going to take advice from you? He clearly thinks he can run over you and frame it as a business discussion, Clara said, her voice rising slightly in indignation. He's playing a game and you don't have to participate in it. Ava's eyes flashed with irritation before she regained her composure. You will have to confront this sooner or later, Sarah. I'm merely presenting an opportunity to negotiate. Opportunity? Sarah echoed, anger rising in her chest. You mean opportunity for David to maintain his grip over my life while pretending he cares? The tension in the room escalated, a taut wire ready to snap. As clamorous thoughts raced through her mind, Sarah focused on the people who surrounded her. Jonathan's unwavering resolve, Clara's fierce loyalty, and, oddly enough, the calming presence of James who stood at her side, offering silent strength. With one last look at Ava, Sarah took a shaky breath, determination surging within her. If we're talking options, then let me lay one down. I'm done being scared. I won't let him dictate my future anymore. David's confident demeanor faltered slightly, and for the first time, Sarah saw a flicker of uncertainty pass over his face. Maybe, just maybe, she had struck a nerve. Ava, not one to miss an opportunity, leaned in closer, her voice barely above a whisper. That attitude could lead to reckless decisions, Sarah. Just remember, the last thing we want is a public fallout. A moment of silence enveloped them, the kind that felt as if the whole world held its breath. But Sarah wouldn't let fear take hold. Then let us make this conversation a productive one, she replied. But on my terms. The air felt charged, and the faces of her friends shone with encouragement. It was time to take back control, to reclaim her voice from the chaos David had unleashed as Ava's lips pressed into a thin line, a calculating glimmer in her eye. Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't over, not by a long shot. With every heartbeat, she sensed the battle lines being drawn. But could she maintain her newfound strength, or would David's influence creep back in once again? Just then, the door swung open again, catching everyone's attention once more. But this time it wasn't another challenger. Stepping inside, it was someone from Sarah's past, someone she had hoped to avoid. The door swung wide, and in walked Mia, Sarah's former boss and a woman who had once been a guiding light in her tangled life. The moment their eyes met, Sarah felt her stomach drop. Mia looked different, older, maybe, but there was a familiar warmth in her eyes. However, the smile quickly faded as she took in the tension in the diner. Sarah? Mia's voice was softer than Sarah remembered, laced with concern. Her gaze flitted to Jonathan and Clara before resting on Ava and David. What's going on? Just a friendly discussion, Ava snapped, still calculating, as if playing a game where she held all the cards. Mia crossed the small space between them, her presence filled with an authority that felt grounding. This doesn't look friendly to me. Sarah's heart raced. Mia had always been the one to champion her, urging her to unleash the strength she so often kept bottled up inside. It's complicated, Sarah said, each word weighed down by years of complex emotions. Mia's eyes narrowed, studying the faces around her. Have you moved forward with everything? Last I heard, you were winning, but I see it's just the beginning. I'm trying, Sarah said, her voice wavering. She felt vulnerable, being watched by so many, especially David, who had always been one to thrive on weakness. But it's not easy when the past keeps creeping back in. Mia stepped closer, her tone lowering to a protective whisper. Then let us address it. As long as you have the right people next to you, none of this is insurmountable. Why did you come here? Sarah asked, a mix of confusion and longing gnawing at her. The last time they'd spoken, Mia had announced her decision to leave the company for a top managing position elsewhere, leaving Sarah feeling abandoned but hopeful. I ran into Ava outside. She filled me in, Mia replied, glancing at Ava. Turns out you're quite the topic of conversation lately, Sarah. Jonathan shifted beside her, tense and alert. Clara's supportive grip tightened on Sarah's arm, prompting Sarah to feel fortified. Where do you stand, Mia? David's voice cut through the atmosphere like a knife, taking Sarah by surprise. You know where your loyalties lie. Mia raised an eyebrow, leaning forward slightly, a fierce glint in her eyes. My loyalty lies with those who are willing to fight for themselves. Something Sarah seems ready to do now. The weight of Mia's declaration wrapped around Sarah, promising a flicker of strength. A rush of emotion surged within her. Was it possible that even in her weakest moments, she could rally the support she needed? David let his smug facade slip just a fraction, revealing the hint of panic beneath. You can't protect her from the realities of this situation, Mia. You don't know what's at stake. Oh, don't I? Mia snapped, her voice a force of nature now. I've seen the devastation David can wreak. But Sarah's not the naive girl you once knew. You underestimate her at your own peril. Sarah's chest tightened with a mix of fear and exhilaration. It felt like the tides were shifting, a new alliance forming by the binding threads of shared experiences. And yet, the air was still heavy with uncertainty. Let us talk, Sarah finally proposed, surprising even herself with her boldness. If confrontation is what you're after, let us do it. But on my terms, without the games. Ava's expression morphed into something darker, her plans unraveling before her. Sarah could see the wheels turning in her mind, trying to regain control. Remember what I said about reckless decisions? Ava warned, but this time there was an edge of desperation in her tone. I'm not afraid of your threats anymore, Sarah declared, feeling a fire ignite within her. It's time that I took a stand. As the gravity of her statement settled, she turned to Mia, who looked ready to stand by her side in whatever storm lay ahead. But just then, the door creaked open again, revealing someone whose connection to Sarah might just tip the balance of the battle they were all fighting. The newcomer stepped into the diner, a figure who, until now, had been a shadow from Sarah's past. It was Michael, Mia's former colleague, a man known for his sharp mind and radiant energy. Sarah's heart raced, memories flooding back. Michael had always believed in her when others didn't, offering words of wisdom at just the right moments. But they hadn't spoken in years, and seeing him now stirred up a tangle of emotions: relief, anxiety, and those old, unspoken feelings. Michael? Sarah's voice was barely above a whisper, a mix of surprise and uncertainty. Sarah, he said with a warmth that almost felt like a hug. He made his way toward her, his eyes sweeping over the tense gathering. I heard there was some drama going on here and thought I should check in. David crossed his arms, a sardonic smile creeping onto his face. Well, you're just in time for the show. Grab a front row seat. Michael's eyebrows shot up as he scanned the room, taking in the atmosphere thick with tension. What's going on? Is everything okay? Just a little family reunion gone wrong, Ava interjected dryly, throwing Sarah a look that felt more like a challenge. Before Sarah could respond, Clara nudged her arm gently, grounding her. It's your moment, Sarah. Own it. Taking a deep breath, Sarah stood tall. Michael, I'm preparing to confront some challenges that have been hanging over my head. Challenges that I thought I could ignore, but they're here right now. Michael's gaze locked onto hers, a flicker of admiration igniting behind his blue eyes. I'm here for you. Always have been. Jonathan cleared his throat, his nervousness palpable. This isn't just about you, Sarah. There are stakes involved. Right or wrong, Jonathan, it's my decision now. She shot back, her voice steady as she cast a glance around the diner. The faces around her silently cheered her on, and it felt like a spark igniting a long-dormant flame. Mia nodded, an approving smile breaking through the tension. You've got the fire in you, and it's time to unleash it. Michael, you've always been a force. Stick around, we could use some of that energy on our side. Ava, sensing the shift in dynamic, narrowed her eyes. You're making a mistake, Sarah. You think this is just a game? The outcome depends on choices, every single one of them. Then let us not play games. Let us lay down the truth, Sarah insisted, her voice gaining depth. Michael, help me bring out what needs to be said, not just for me, but for all of us entangled in this mess. Michael stepped closer, his presence comforting and powerful. You've always been strong, Sarah. Let us turn that strength into action. What can I do to help? As the words settled in the air, Sarah felt the possibility of something changing. An alliance was forming, stronger and more vibrant than she'd ever imagined. But in that moment, David's laughter erupted, an icy contrast to the warmth around them. You really think this is going to solve anything? You're stepping into a territory that doesn't play fair, and never has. Then we'll change the rules, Mia replied, her defiance palpable. Sarah deserves a chance to rewrite her story, and I'll support her every step of the way. The tension shifted, and suddenly the diner felt less like a battleground and more like a platform for something new. But just as that sense of hope began to take root, Ava shoved her way into the center, her voice a sharp blade cutting the conversation in two. Don't get ahead of yourselves. This isn't just about strength in numbers. It's about strategy, and you're all dangerously unprepared. The words hung heavy in the air, threatening to cast darkness over the small ember of hope Sarah had fought to kindle. Just when the dust had begun to settle, a wave of uncertainty crashed back in, and she realized they were all standing on the edge of a precipice, waiting to see who would dare to leap. Would Sarah's new alliance withstand the storm, or would the shadows of manipulation pull them back into the fray? As doubt niggled in the corners of her mind, her thoughts raced. But it was now or never. The air crackled with tension as Sarah stood at the precipice of her own choices. The din of the restaurant faded into the background, leaving only her heartbeat pounding in her ears. It felt like life was offering her a chance, a whisper telling her now was the moment to reclaim her story. Enough is enough, she declared, her voice resolute and firm, surprising even herself. The faces around her, Jonathan, Clara, Michael, and now Mia's support wrapped around her like a warm blanket, shielding her from David's relentless storm. I'm done being scared of you, David. You might think you know how to manipulate me, but look around. I have allies now. I'm not in this alone anymore. David's expression flickered, a mix of disdain and confusion as he stepped back, momentarily taken aback. Ava, however, continued to wield her power, with a chilling smile playing on her lips. You really think you can take a stand against him? You don't know the lengths he will go to, she said, her voice oily, the threat hanging in the air like a sword waiting to drop. I know what I've been through, and I know I'm stronger than I've ever been, Sarah countered, heart racing yet steady. And I choose to fight for my daughter and my dreams, no matter the cost. The words flowed unbidden, a melody of confidence through the chaos surrounding her. Jonathan, emboldened by her declaration, placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. We're with you, Sarah, every step of the way. The strength in their unity fueled her conviction, fortifying her resolve. She turned to Mia, who stepped forward with eyes ablaze. It's time we collectively expose David for who he really is, a coward hiding behind vindictive threats. Clara chimed in, and let us not forget that you, David, underestimate the power of a community. Your manipulation won't work here. David's smirk shifted into a scowl, realizing his control was slipping between his fingers. In the midst of the tension, Sarah felt Michael shift closer, a reassuring presence that reminded her of the strength they had always shared. This ends now, he echoed, his voice strong. Then there it was, the moment Daniel had feared. You can't just dismantle the life I built for us, he screamed, his mask of bravado faltering under the weight of anger, unraveling before them. Yes, I can, Sarah cried, the fire in her voice undeniable now. You've only ever brought darkness to our lives, and it's time I let in the light. As power surged through her, she felt herself growing lighter, a peace settling over her. The diner held its breath as Ava shot a frantic glance at David, realizing their carefully spun web was unraveling. You may win the battle for now, but the war has just begun, she spat, her facade cracking. We're not interested in your games anymore, Jonathan said, his voice deep and certain. Anna, the waitress overhearing, stepped forward, having grown weary from David's manipulations herself. Sarah, you've shown courage tonight. I stand with you. As those gathered began to unite, the tide shifted against David. Sarah felt lighter, lifted by the hands of those who dared to stand together. It was as if walls were falling, revealing a path drenched in hope. I'm going to fight for my dreams, my bakery, a life for my daughter. You won't dictate my future anymore, Sarah shouted, her heart pounding with euphoria and fear all at once. With a newfound clarity, every doubt she had carried for too long slipped away. She stepped closer to David and Ava, feeling the reality of the moment. This was her life, her decision. The confrontation that had once filled her with dread now forged an invincible armor against all that David represented. As David opened his mouth to retaliate, he froze. It was clear to everyone the moment had shifted. You really think you've cornered me, don't you? This isn't over. No, it just began, Sarah affirmed, her spirit soaring as the shadows began to recede. And just like that, they watched the facade crack further, realization dawning on David as he came to terms with the fact that he had underestimated the power of unity and the strength of a determined heart. The air pulsated with newfound hope, the restaurant filled with whispers of revolution, of stories yet to be written. Together, they defaced the obstacles ahead, shielded by a strength only love and friendship could forge. As Sarah raised her chin, she understood something profound. It was time to embrace her dreams. And as the challenges loomed, she was ready to face whatever darkness awaited with those who had bravely stepped into her life. We're ready for whatever comes next. Together, she declared, her heart full and tearful with gratitude. And in that instant, emboldened by the love and strength surrounding her, Sarah knew everything was about to change. Don't miss a beat. Subscribe immediately to the channel so you won't miss the next exclusive stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Trust me, it makes a real difference. Comment below your thoughts and feelings about how Sarah transformed from a shadow of herself to a beacon of hope. Don't wait not even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this incredible transformation. This is the moment to show your support. Only true fans know how vital these actions are.